Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development and Consulting, a show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. So today I've got such a cool opportunity, and that is to have a conversation with a fellow that's become a great friend over the last decade. And I think just maybe 2 weeks beyond a decade from the first time we met. I think it was around Valentine's Day in 2016, if I'm remembering right. I don't know if it was Valentine's Day. I'm making that crap up as I say this, but it was in February of 2016. I remember interviewing Scott for an HVAC service technician apprentice position. And in the conversation, I remember we offered him $14 an hour, a little bit more than we would offer other people because he was a little bit older. That was the service manager's words, not mine. And I just about fell out of my damn chair when that happened. But the reality was, I saw in the interview, and I remember telling the owner of the company after we had the interview that if we treat this guy right, within 3 years, he can manage the service department 100%. And he did. I'll skip the rest of the history, but as things has progressed, the reality is he got his master HVAC license, and he's just on the first couple of days of launching his company, Repair Air. So we'll talk about some of that, the purpose driving him, and really the values that's based on that. But Scott, how about you talk through the wider professional background and what really led you to do what you're doing today, going off on your own?
Thanks for having me on the podcast. As you're aware of my previous experience, I spent approximately 16 years of my life in restaurant management, 10 of those with a fairly large company that at the time had about 70,000 employees. That taught me how to lead under pressure, how to drive efficiency, keep people motivated in trying circumstances. In 2016, as you stated, I made a jump, more like a leap of faith, out of my established career and into HVAC. And I started at 35, where most HVAC techs start at 18 to 20. And I served as an apprentice for a while, earned my stripes, got a van, and progressed through the system. And I held multiple roles with the company I was with, from service tech to general manager of the service department, then over to project manager and the construction side. And finally, the last couple of years, I've been the startup and commissioning supervisor. Today, I own Repair Air. It's a small, locally owned and operated business. We're fully licensed and insured in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley of Virginia.
I'm super excited about it. I want to talk about some of the why behind Repair Air as we move forward. Before we do that, though, let's talk about some of your experience. And you were with the chain, you said with 70,000 people. I didn't realize it was that big. I don't know if it stayed that big after they took the old man out of the rocking chair, but that's a different conversation for a different day. In doing that, talk about what the purpose was. And this is really on the heels of my 2025 book, Leading with Clear Purpose. What was that purpose that drove you to accept that leadership responsibility as you grew through the ranks there and had to dodge flying tomatoes and things like that? And that's a real story. I'm not sure if we'll have time for that today, but what drove you to do that?
What really hit home with your book, Leading with a Clear Purpose, I've seen too many good people burn out, stuck in unstable positions, good people who had every bit of talent and could have progressed. And it really drove me to want to create an efficient and stable working environment for people. And that kept me going for a while. Eventually, that I had other interests and moved on. But then once again, resume that role with the new company I was in. And I really what drove me to start my own company is so I could create a business that lives out stability, efficiency, honesty, responsibility every single day.
No, and I watch the environment you provide for the people that you serve, the teams that you lead, and so on. And I've always respected that. We've not always absolutely agreed on everything, but nobody does. If people say they agree with everybody all the time, they'll lie to us about other stuff too, right? But
Right.
I've watched how intent you've been on protecting the team that you lead and making sure that they've got the right tools that they need. And that's what leadership is. It's not doing for people what they should do for themselves. It's making sure that they can do what they're responsible for doing. Now, with the background, with that purpose that you've had, talk a little bit about what really pushed you to start Repair Air. And a little bit, I'm going to read it because I put it in the show notes to tee this up. You you referenced that the whole purpose with Repair Air was to be able to provide something that people weren't getting, to make sure that they knew they could trust what they had and manage their expenses and so on and so forth. Talk about how the background that you've had and some of the different experiences with different tech companies in that technical field, you've seen some wonky stuff that you said, yeah, I'm not doing that.
What you see a lot, specifically in the residential sector of our trade, is a lot of larger companies coming in, buying out smaller companies, and they aren't concerned with the community when they do that. A lot of times, I may get in trouble for saying this, but they don't. They come in, they try and get as much as they can out of the area, and then they generally either sell those companies or just leave. So, what that looks like to the average customer is a technician that comes in, they try and sell you a whole unit without really looking at your unit. They don't really give you a lot of options as far as repair, and they're not very transparent as far as the communication. And that breeds distrust where, most technicians, specifically technicians, and a lot of owners are honest people and they really want to do a good job for their customer. The issue comes in when these investment companies come in and all they care about is sales and profits. And that gives a really bad look to the industry and it breeds mistrust around the customers. And I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be the fix it guys. I wanted to be the repair air. We come out, we're focused on repairing what you have, maintaining it so that you get the most money and the longest life out of your equipment. And when it does come time, because it will, to replace that equipment, you will be 100% in the loop. You will expect it. It will not be a surprise. And, you can budget for it. So.
Yeah, the same thing that drove you to start your business, and you mentioned it earlier, leap of faith, is really the same thing that drove me and Cindy to start what we do, have been doing for now almost 11 years. I remember seeing a consultant that was absolutely pillaging people and not providing return on investment. And I said, man, if he's worth half of what he's making, I'm going to be freaking rich. Well, I'm not rich yet, but he wasn't worth half of what he was making either. That's
Oh,
a whole
really?
different story too. Yeah, the reality is, hey, they don't care about the community. They care about themselves. They don't all, usually, even though they say they do, care about the clients that are paying them. But I wanted to take the fight to that market, just like you're willing to take that fight to the market that you're serving. And I'm so excited about locking arms with you and helping you do that because, again, the respect's always been there. Now, you've alluded to it. You kind of teed it up. What's one of your core values? And if you want to touch on all four, because I know what they are, you're welcome to. But what I'd love to hear and be able to really shine a spotlight on is how you are going to work to model those so that everybody you interact with, the team that you build, the community that you serve, feel those values in everything you do.
The primary one, the one that I wanted to make sure was the leader of the values, is the first one, honesty. As stated before, I think the industry gets a really bad rap and it's unfair. And I think that having transparency with customers and being in that teacher mindset rather than the salesman mindset. You can have education focused service versus sales focused service. And once again, it's to eliminate any type of surprises for the customer. My values in general, or the ones I developed, are honesty, vision, approachability, and care. Honesty specifically is being transparent. Vision is looking ahead, trying to find the best solution for the customer. Approachability is you can talk to me. I'm not going to be intimidating. I'm going to answer the phone and we're going to talk through what's the best solution for you. And then care. It's very important to me. I had older parents, I have a young daughter. I really, really appreciate when people treat my family and the people I care about with the same level of care and respect that I would. And that is what I want. I want for myself and eventually whoever works with me, when they go to somebody's residence, that person feels like they're welcoming somebody friendly into the house that's going to treat them with respect, not somebody who is gruff or that they don't really want in their personal space.
100%. And Scott, I love two things about that. One, it spells HVAC. I loved how you made the play on what you're doing, and it's not a play because the second thing I'm going to say is in the more than a decade that we've interacted very, very closely, sometimes more than others, but consistently throughout, I've watched the honesty, the vision, the approachability, and the care every single time that we've interacted with. I can't point to a single scenario where those things haven't shown through. So it's easy to say it. Statistically, somewhere between 70 and 80% of all companies have their values in a handbook or on a website. But I can promise you that very few talk about them and even less live them out. And praise God, I've gotten to see you live them out for more than a decade. If anybody wants to challenge that, who do you want to fight first, me or Scott? There it is. Now, with that said, since this is your company, I won't ask the next question that I typically do, and it's how do your personal values align with the company values? But because I've already seen it, and they are your personal values. You just put the different words in it to match HVAC, but that's who you are and how you live. What I would love for you to do, and I can even tee up one if you want me to, but maybe share an example of an opportunity that you've had to come in where somebody's been told, hey, you need this $100,000 fix, and no, you really don't. Here's what we can do, and let me make sure that I'm going to take care of you in the process.
Sure. And in the interest of full transparency, this event is what really solidified my desire to open the business. I always talked about it. I always wanted to open the business. In fact, I already had my contractor license and things in the works at this point, but I was still not pulling the trigger. And then this phone call. And the phone call was a local resident who had a reputable HVAC company come by and tell her she needed an entire new system, and somewhere in the realm of $15,000 to replace. And this was a complete surprise. She was, of course, looking for other options or other opinions. So I was put in touch with her. I did not go to the site. I want to put that as a disclaimer, but in talking to her, it was really obvious that this was a sales-based call and not truly a service-based call. She had a older unit. For those of you who know, it's an R22 unit, which is about 2 refrigerants ago. So the refrigerant's expensive. The parts are sometimes hard to get, but the unit was working. And I asked her if she had any major repairs. She said yes. I asked her what it was, and it was a fairly simple repair that was taken care of the year before that was still working. At the end of the conversation, what it really came down to was the unit was operational, it was still working, and she was told the only reason to change it out was because it was old. And I told her I would ride that horse till it died, to be totally honest. And to this day, she's still on the same equipment. And that was what, 6, 7 months ago. At the time, she did not need to spend that money. Will she in the future? Absolutely. They're machines, they have a usable life. But this was not the time she needed to spend that money. And now she knows it's coming up and she can budget for it.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I'd go so far as to say it was more than a year, maybe closer to 2 years. That's how fast time goes because I know the
yeah.
person. I know how the sequence of events led up to it because I'm pretty sure it was my mom that says, hey, can Scott touch base with this
Yeah.
person that was a friend of hers and so on. So I think it was actually close to 2 years. So time goes,
Oh my
whether we
God.
want to or not. Talk to me a little bit about how what a powerful example, and it's one example of many. You could, if time permitted, I know of scenarios where you've done that same thing for customers in each organization you've been a part of in the time that we've known one another. But for sake of time, we can't go through all of them. Talk about how your values, the things that matter the most to you personally, have really driven you to invest time, energy, money into developing yourself as a leader, because being a leader is not being a boss. It's two very, very different things. How do you make sure that you lead the customers you serve, the team that you're part of, whether there's a direct reporting relationship or not?
First off, leadership is not glamorous. I've learned that, and that's been reinforced harshly over the course of my career. And you make sacrifices, and you rarely get credit. Generally, the credit goes to the ones you're leading, as it should, 100%. And the what I was very concerned about when I jumped out of my role as a fairly high level manager for the other firm before I came into HVAC was letting that muscle atrophy, because I went from leading a team of 200 employees and multiple managers to sitting in a van and being the employee and having all the bosses now again and not leading anybody. And I was very, very concerned that would atrophy, because if you don't use a muscle, it gets weak and goes away. So I was very lucky and fortunate to, of course, to meet you and our friendship. And then when you and Cindy decided to go and open Dove Development, you always included me and you always allowed me to keep that muscle exercised. You let me have those discussions with leaders in the community, good leaders, strong leaders in the community. And I was able to stay within a group that was utilizing that. And it allowed me to, I feel, keep my skill set in place and keep those core values in place.
And that really leads into my next question. And I'll say that that group in and of itself, that I'll talk about in just a second, has been one of the things that's forced me to make sure that I'm keeping my saw sharp every single day, because the people that we interact with, the people that count on us, the people that I've made a commitment to, stretch the crap out of me. And if I lay an egg, that's on me, and I just can't. So that forces me to continue to be better too. You're right. It's a 100% muscle that we've got to work and stretch and grow every single day. Now, you were one of the founding members. Matter of fact, you and one other person, Jordan Rohr, were the two folks that I bounced ideas off of. And when we shaped the Executive Leadership Elite think tank that we started in early 2019, I guess it was late 2018 as we were having those conversations on the heels of so many other things. So if you're hearing this and you're not already, pray for Cindy, because I throw a lot of crap at her every single day. Holy moly.
We all know, Wes. We all know.
Yes, you do. Her more than anybody. Yes, there's stuff that I would make some people's heads pop. But the reality is, we bounced that through. You were one of the founding members. You were involved for a couple of years early on, some different job changes. And as you've worked through all the progression of finishing your master's license, getting your contractor's license, and starting your business, you're back engaged. And we just, in the most recent group session, when we were in person 2 months ago, as we have this conversation, Cindy and I did the very first time publicly where we shared the idea of the framework for applying the values advantage. And that's going to be the theme of the upcoming 2026 Leadership Legacy Experience. You're a partner with us on that and so on. Based on what you know to this point, and the book that just came out, gosh, 2 weeks ago or something like that, talk about what you see and feel with the opportunities that people that really engage and latch onto that idea of the values advantage, and specifically the framework we're doing, what they can expect to gain from that process.
I'll be, once again, I just want to say I'm super excited to be involved again at this level, and I appreciate the opportunity to be. And in reading the Values Advantage, it shows exactly how living with values creates measurable results: higher retention, better profitability, a stronger culture, a real legacy, so to speak. And anyone who goes through the process will get a daily compass that turns good intentions into consistent leadership wins. That's probably the best way I can put it into perspective. And I think it truly gives leaders the value advantage. The title speaks to what the content is, in my mind.
Yeah, it's not a book on theory. It's a book that I watched play out over the last 5 years, and I couldn't not write the book. I had to do it because I've watched something impact a group of people like I'd never seen before. And you've met the guy that was the case study for the book. And it's just something that I'm going, holy freaking cow, this is powerful. I've seen things. And I'll ask you this, is off script. In the big organization that you were part of, 70,000 people, how familiar were you with the values that they had? I'm sure they had stated values. Did you know at that point, and did your team members have the same clarity of here's how we live those values daily, that you've seen this gentleman that I used as my case study for the book really embed in his organizations?
To your point, to go a little off script, yes, they had them. And yes, they drove them home. And I worked multiple restaurants in the area. The ones that were successful lived the values and they believed in the values. And we were able to hire people that represented the values and thereby attracting customers that appreciated the values. And it was a circle of success. The restaurants that I worked that did not live by the values, did not hire by the values, those were problem situations and they needed to be reset. And once they were, and it was very simple: focus on the values. That is your core. Everything you do needs to go back to that. And from hiring to conversations with customers to decisions you make, because every manager is making hundreds of decisions a day that affect multiple people. And once you brought back to that core, the ship kind of righted itself. And this is a company with 70,000 employees. And or had 70, I don't know what they have now. It's been since 2014 since I haven't been there. So it's been about 12 years. But at the time, it was a very strong culture. And at the time, the old man in the bench was a big part of that culture.
Yeah, in the different stores, the ones that had the circle of success and the ones that didn't, the ones that they said, "Hey, Scott, we need you to come in and turn this one around." What was the determining factor that you saw between they were living by the values or they weren't living by the values?
It really came from the leadership in that store from the get-go, how they mapped out, once again, who they brought into the environment. Because if you bring good people into the environment, it'll attract good people. I always tell people I hire people for their character. I can teach you the hard skills. I can't teach you not to be a jerk. And that's basically as simply as I can put it. So
100% agree. And another reason we continue to get along over and over. We can teach a skill. We can't teach character. It's just not there.
yeah.
The last question really builds on this. And then I do an informal question that's not in anything I share in advance because I really want the spontaneous response. But the last one that I've scripted that I'll share with you in advance and so on is, what advice would you give somebody that's young, aspiring, and they want to grow into leadership? Now, I'm going to preface this. You said earlier that leadership is not glamorous. It's hard. 100% agree. Hey, if Cindy and I took the roles that we have, if we were starting our business for the money, for the prestige, for the glamour, I promise you we would still have jobs because it didn't come with it. It's been a lot of work, a hell of a lot of work. But talk about what you would do if it's your children. Talk about if you're giving this feedback to your kids and they want to grow into and become successful leaders, not supervisors and managers specifically, but leaders. What's the advice you're giving them?
Don't lose your core. Don't lose your core. And every single time that I strayed from my core values and beliefs, it didn't end up well for me. And even though at times it is easier, it is maybe the path of least resistance, maybe you don't upset people, maybe you're easier to swallow in a situation. But if you give that up, it never ends well. So be confident, be radically honest. So treat people, every person, the way that you would want them to treat a loved one, and you will be successful. But with that, if your thought process is to be sitting on a lounger eating bonbons while hundreds of people work for you, don't do it. Work for a leader. Because if you work for a good leader, you'll have the time, you'll have the money, and you'll have the life that would be. But if you are a leader, your life is 100% serving other people all the time. And if that isn't something that excites you, don't do it.
Yep. And the reality is there's a lot of people that aren't cut out for it, not because they're not capable, because they're not willing to do what it takes.
Sure.
So now I'm going to tee up the last one, and then I'm going to talk about show notes and some different stuff about how to reach out to Scott and so on. So the last one is always, what have I not asked you that I should be asking you in this? What message do you want to share? Now, think about that just for a little bit. I'll share that your new website, you just launched the business within the last few days. You've been working behind the scenes. You've been maintaining a full-time job, executing, delivering in that role, never pushed in the clutch, and so on. But it's new. So repair-air.com. It's in the show notes. Cool website starting out. If you're looking for a glamorous, perfect website, mine and Scott's aren't the ones you're looking for. If you're looking for results that you can count on, well, we got you on that, right? That's what we do. But glamour, not so much. I'd rather let the reputation do the talking than something flashed on the website. Now, that said, if there's any other points of contact or whatever else you want to share, here's your opportunity to say, here's who I am. Here's why you need to talk to me.
I'm, as stated before, locally owned and operated business. I'm licensed and insured in the state of Virginia. And if you want somebody to come in and to give you an honest evaluation of what's going on with your system, give you some options that you can be assured isn't walking in the door just to sell you a new system, give me a call. The focus is transparency. The focus is honesty. I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror too. And that's very important to me. I want to be proud of what I do. I want my family to be proud of what I do. And you know what? That's my motivating factor.
Well, my friend Cindy and I are proud of what you do, and we're thrilled to be able to call you a friend. So thank you for taking the time to do this. In closing, thanks for being part of the Leading at the Next Level podcast, both Scott and anybody that's catching in, whether it's through our community, through the podcast platforms, or anywhere else you're accessing this, even if it's through the 2026 Leadership Legacy digital game plan product, that the edited, the clean version of this is there. So maybe I've cut out some of the stuff that I said was a little bit edgy. Maybe not though either. Here's what I'll say. If you need continuing education credits, one of the things Cindy and I've done since late 2018 is we've had a program called Leading at the Next Level. Funny, it's the same name under the same banner as the community and the podcast. But in that program, there's a monthly membership fee. It's low cost. And if you reach out to me at admin@dove-development.net, I'll get you hooked up with a 7-day free trial and some kind of discount, probably around 25% discount to any one of those. So you can kick the tires. But in one of the tiers, we've offered continuing education credit in the HR community to where we've now got approaching 200 hours worth of credits. I don't know of anything else like it in the marketplace today, especially not at the price point before you even take into consideration the discount. So reach out to us. Scott, thanks again for being a part of this with me. Look forward to watching you grow and, more importantly, watching the impact you have on the community and everybody you serve. Make it a great day, guys.